So the process for us is going to be this. We're going to pick the 8 workflow processes called the primary 8, which assist an organisation in the digital workflow. So from the time of assessment of an asset at the accession stage, planning, the digitisation of that asset, conservation assessment, movement within the organisation, physical movement of the asset into the photography department, photography, assessment of the quality assurance of the photography, the whole pre-dam workflow where we're talking about physical processes, and then into the dam, and then the end processes of putting the item back and conservation assessment after photography, see if there's any damage to it, and legal assessment, the rights management, all those processes which are attendant upon the ingestion of one object into the system have to be managed. And the primary 8 processes have a lot of workflow processes already worked out to help you do that. Now, these processes have been mapped into a spectrum framework, and they've been mapped into the business process modelling notation, BPMN, by Professor Walter Koch at the AIT in Vienna, and they're compatible with any BPAL workflow engines. The Serena Mashups is one of those, and there are quite a few workflow tools that we can work with, and we've worked with Mashups for the Museum Victoria and State Library New South Wales, and it works quite well. And it will be promoted by Collections Trust. And the idea behind it is you'll be able to get these workflow processes for free for one user. So you can license one user to access these workflows, and if they suit, if you can see how they can be flexible enough to be adapted to your particular requirements, you can license it for the organisation. And all the design work has been done by a lot of other people and driven by Professor Koch in Vienna. So Collections Trust will have verified this. We're hoping to do this in the next 3 or 4 months. So early next year we will have an offering to the Australian cultural scene to adopt workflows very easily. Because at the moment they're very difficult to design and over-design as well. So keeping them simple is very important. So the idea is Professor Koch in Vienna is going to help us bring it to Canberra. That's our game. That's our aim, to spread the word of the spectrum and help Australian institutions adopt an emerging world standard on business process management. So the third point, before I hand over to Angeletta for the case study, I want to bring up this issue because a lot of people that Hamish and Jeff have been talking to in cultural institutions have asked about cloud computing and solutions, and a lot of people have had experience with installed solutions and hosted solutions and the difference between them in terms of cost and effort. Now, everybody knows that probably by now that an installed solution can be expensive and time-consuming and quite a big process. But if you have the budget for it, it's great if you can do it because it's a really good solution in the end. If you don't have a budget but you want everything, what do you do? So if you go hosted, a lot of people can't go hosted because it's against the mandate. You can't have your assets in the cloud. It's just not possible to do that because you need to keep your assets on premise, and putting them in the cloud is anathema to most cultural institutions and probably against your mandate. Let's just go through some of the advantages of the cloud just so we can start talking through what might be a possible solution. First of all, you can start integrating with other cloud processes very easily and economically. It won't cost you much to actually integrate these products, whereas if you install a product, you have integration issues which have to be solved for your particular network structure and environment, and then you have to have a test bed, an installation bed, a systems integration bed, and a production environment, and it's very complicated, and to have to roll out one piece of software into a standard operating environment is hard work. Whereas in the cloud, you just turn it on and it starts working. So, and the price differential is there. But I'll just run through some of the interesting cloud offerings that may start you thinking about what you can do in the cloud. First of all, our Find Me solution, where you can have any of your images that you have in your asset repertoire or your inventory can be tracked on the internet to see if someone's used them. So that we index the photograph by recognise the content of the photograph, and we go looking for it on the internet to see if someone has used that photograph. And even if they flip it left, right, change the colour, hue, saturation or anything like that, or even take components of it and use it in another composite image, The machine is pretty good at finding anybody who's ripping off your images and using them, or who's using them quite legitimately with a license, so you can actually have report back. And the interface to look at that is within the Look at Me search engine. We just have it's another report that says, okay, show me where my images have been used anywhere around the world on the web. So that's a cloud solution that's available as a licensed product, which if you installed, which would be much more complicated. Auto Tag Me is an intelligent image recognition software which will tag the content of images. So if you have, particularly in an archival area where you have a lot of images of real world images as opposed to works of art, where you have photographs of items, people, so it recognise people, gender, objects such as trucks and buildings and scenery. You can actually have keywords added into your images automatically. Obviously they're computer generated and unverified. We normally would put those into an unverified keyword field. You can read text in an image, so if you have a photograph of a street scene in a city and there's shop signs in the windows with wording, text in it, that can be read into the system as well. So that is a really powerful feature. It doesn't replace a curator or anything, obviously, because it is artificially generated by a computer, but it is an extra item of metadata which helps people locate images. Manage Me, the business process management systems such as Serena Business Mashups, Cordy's that we're also working with, other business process management systems. So in the cloud, you have instant access to these products, and they're very, very economical in the cloud compared with installation. Transcribe Me is an audio and video transcription software which will listen to an audio track or a video tape, and it will take all the words that are spoken from that and put them into the metadata and attach it to the frame identifier. So the actual keyframes will be identified as when that word was spoken. You'll be able to find the frame. If you have a video of when Rus Littleson was making a speech in a certain year and he said a certain word, you can look for that and it will come up with the exact frame in that video by recognising the speech. Again, like installing this software would be quite a task, but getting it in the cloud is quite simple. But come back to, you can't really do it in the cloud because you can't put your assets in the cloud. But let's have a look at the left-hand bar here is hosted solution. Hosted solutions are obviously very economical, extremely economical, and installed solutions are very expensive. They're the two extremes. But there is a hybrid solution which we're working on, which we call C3S, or cloud computing, client storage. So that should explain everything just in the title itself. The cloud does the management of the data, but you store it on your premises. And that way you manage to meet your mandate that your data is safe and secure inside your Fort Knox, behind your Fort Knox firewall. Everything's safe, but you manage the data in the cloud so that you can take advantage of software and rapid development of software and rapid development of new modules without having to go through a tedious, complicated release process, which you get inured to that somewhat. If you have an installed solution, that's what you do. But if you don't want to have to go through that, then you do it in the cloud. So we'll be seeing this increasingly happen, that there'll be cloud solutions for complicated software so that you can retain your agility, react to new processes that are available in the marketplace without having to take a long time, because you'll have to react faster and faster and faster to new demands from the community and new solutions to those demands that come out. So the typical release scenario for integrating with a system can take many months to say, oh, this is a really nice piece of software. It might be 18 months before you see it actually have an impact on your institution if you have an installed solution. If you have a cloud solution, you can have it up next week and turn it off next week if you don't like it. So that's without having cost very much at all. We're talking very small amounts of money for it. So it has to come into the mix when you're talking about wanting every feature under the sun. Like you want the best, you want the greatest system to manage your works, but you don't have $2 million or $5 million to put into it. These have to be considered as options. So particularly like if you have TIFFs and you have 150 megabyte TIFFs, you don't want to be putting those into the cloud because they'll take up, the bandwidth will take up, the speed will be so slow, the bandwidth will be chewed up. Video files, there's going to really kill putting assets in the cloud. And sensitive images, another reason why most people are mandated not to put things in the cloud, because you have sensitive images, culturally sensitive images, politically sensitive images, business sensitive images. So you don't want to put them in the cloud, because a lot of people are using collection management systems to manage non-collection items as well, such as events and internal functions being photographed. So keep your high definition files in premise, manage them in the cloud. Get a little bit technical for a minute. I don't often do this, but that's how it works. Your client environment is, you're in here. There's some client software here to upload, generate and store derivatives here. So you keep the masters, you keep the pre-derivatives, and you manage the data files via the Look at Me software as a service environment. So the users, if you wish to have commercialise or monetize your assets, is handled here. The metadata is handled here, the preview derivatives, but everything's backed up into here. And the internal user accesses this system and never penetrates the firewall and access to expose what you have inside here. So it's another layer of security, it's another layer of disaster recovery planning as well. So everything here is a duplicate of what's in here, but you manage it here because every time we want to upgrade the software or add a new module, it's done instantly without any shutdowns, any testing. You don't have to do anything internally. We've got 1,000 people who potentially are using it to do the tests. You don't have to put your own test team in. So you can see the savings just in employing one little module can be enormous just for that one. The cost internally can be enormous, externally it's not. So now I'm going to ask if Angeletta could do her presentation on the Museum Victoria project, and we'll get this PowerPoint up and running. Thank you.